Hi everyone, I'm Suzanne Ozment from the World Resources Institute. I've been working for about 4 years on the Business and Ecosystems project here at WRI. So thank you, James, for the wonderful introduction to ecosystem services and the examples of how ecosystem change can truly have a drastic impact on a business's bottom line. That brings us to the Corporate Ecosystem Services Review. Here's a screenshot of our new and improved Ecosystem Services Review. The ESR was originally developed in 2008, a partnership between the Meridian Institute, WBCSD, and WRI. We also road tested the method with 5 companies from WBCSD to influence the Ecosystem Services Review guidelines. And that's AkzoNobel, BC Hydro, Mondi, Rio Tinto, and Syngenta. And so those first 5 companies that tested the Ecosystem Services Review have also contributed examples and case studies that are captured in the ESR's guidelines. Now, just this year, we've updated and reprinted the Ecosystem Services Review, and we'll go over the few minor changes that we've had so far. But first of all, what is the Corporate Ecosystem Services Review? Well, it's a structured method that helps managers proactively develop strategies to manage business risks and opportunities arising from their company's dependence and impact on ecosystems. Let's break that down a little bit. It's a method to efficiently think through new issues that a company is facing. It's not a tool where you put in information and it spits out an answer. The ESR is proactive. It's forward-looking into the future, and it enables managers to look at issues that are not usually captured in traditional environmental assessments. It's a tool for strategy development. The ESR is proven to help managers generate new ideas to make or save money directly related to ecosystem stewardship. It goes beyond philanthropic sustainability efforts to help companies understand how they can improve the bottom line from ecosystem stewardship. Finally, the ESR is unique in that it is just as much about assessing dependence on ecosystem services as it is about looking at impacts. There are 5 steps to the Corporate Ecosystem Services Review. Step 1 is to select the scope to ensure that you're going to have a manageable boundary within which to conduct the Ecosystem Services Review. So candidate scopes might include a specific business unit, a product line, corporate land holdings, or a major supplier. Step 2 is to identify priority ecosystem services by systematically evaluating a company's dependence and impact on an array of ecosystem services. The goal of this step is to determine which priority ecosystem services are the most relevant to corporate performance. And we find that typically companies will choose 5 to 7 ecosystem services to take forward for the rest of the Ecosystem Services Review. Step 3 is to analyze trends in priority ecosystem services by researching and evaluating the future likelihood of a change in each ecosystem service. Step 4 is to identify business risks and opportunities related to ecosystem change. And step 5 is to develop strategies for managing these risks and opportunities. So as you can see, the ESR bridges ecosystem and business considerations by starting out with an evaluation of a company's interactions with ecosystems, and it finishes with an assessment of implications for business performance. I'll quickly go through the framework that helps managers efficiently conduct an ecosystem services review. And this is also described in the actual ESR guidelines as well. Step 1 is to select the scope of assessment. There's 3 major questions that the ESR points to. One is to choose which stage of the value chain. For a retail company, a strategic scope might focus more on suppliers that have a direct dependence and impact on ecosystem services. That's just one example. Also, who and where specifically, which suppliers, which aspect of the company, and what is the specific geographic unit. And finally, is it strategic, timely, and supported? Particularly for a company's first ESR, the scope of assessment should be of high strategic importance to the company to ensure that the assessment adds value. Step 2 is to prioritize ecosystem services. And actually, there is a tool called the Dependence and Impact Assessment Tool that accompanies the ESR. And you can download it from WBCSD and WRI's websites around the Ecosystem Services Review. But basically, the tool walks managers through 5 simple questions to help prioritize the ecosystem services that are most relevant to business performance. Typically, companies end up prioritizing about 5 to 7 priority ecosystem services. Step 3 is to assess trends in ecosystem change. To do this, a company will usually call upon internal studies, external reports, and interviews with experts. So the ESR offers a simple way to organize this information through the Trends Analysis Framework. The goal of the Trends Analysis Framework is to identify the conditions and trends in each priority ecosystem service. And that's looking at supply and demand, the quantity and quality that could be changing in the future for each ecosystem service. Not only that, but it's also important to characterize the direct drivers of ecosystem change. And by that I mean the physical changes to ecosystems that can increase or decrease the supply of a key ecosystem service. These direct drivers might include land use change, overconsumption, climate change, or pollution. Also, what company activities are impacting these direct drivers, and who else is impacting these direct drivers? That can tell you a lot. Finally, indirect drivers, and by that I mean shifts in policies, economic change, or demographic change, can influence all 3 of these other boxes, the company's activities, the activities of others, and also the direct drivers. So this is a simple way to organize the information about changes in ecosystem services going forward. The next step of the ESR is to identify risks and opportunities. And the ESR offers 5 simple categories for these risks and opportunities. And you can see, as I'm clicking through, there's examples of risks and opportunities for each of these categories. The categories are operational risks and opportunities, regulatory and legal, reputational, market and product, and financing risks and opportunities as well. One thing that we're offering just new is the updated collection of examples of risks and opportunities that companies face due to ecosystem change. And so that's available on the project website. There's new examples that have been included in that since 2008. We just updated it. Step 5, the final step, is to develop strategies that respond to ecosystem change. Very often companies can address many of the risks and opportunities through changes in their own internal operations, through market and product strategies or other internal activities. But not all ecosystem service-related risks and opportunities can be successfully addressed through internal corporate activities alone. Due to sometimes other actors will be having a major influence on ecosystem services that companies rely on. Or, in other cases, engaging policymakers and government agencies to establish good policies can be a very productive corporate strategy for addressing ecosystem service-related issues. And therefore, there's 3 categories of strategies: internal changes, but also sector and stakeholder engagement, and finally, policymaker engagement. I believe James already mentioned that we estimate that 300 companies have now used the Ecosystem Services Review. And while we have not been in contact with all of these companies, we've been in contact with a lot of them. And here's some feedback that we've gotten about the ESR's value added. One thing that companies seem to like is that the ESR goes beyond biodiversity and emissions to include other important ecosystem considerations, especially regulating services that most environmental management systems tend to exclude. Furthermore, the Ecosystem Services Review is unique in assessing both the impacts and dependence that a company has on ecosystem services. We like to say that the ESR links profit, planet, and people. It's systematic and structured in a way where you can feel confident if you've used the ESR that you've left no stone unturned. But the ESR is also flexible. It can be used in an array of different business situations and is adaptable to a company's unique circumstances and pre-existing corporate processes. Some of the business benefits that companies have received so far from using the ESR is reduced costs, increased revenue streams or new diversified revenue streams, solutions to risks that either customers or suppliers face, access to new markets, emerging markets for ecosystem services, for example. The ESR can be useful in prioritizing policy engagement or strengthening existing approaches to environmental impact assessment or to the environmental management system that many companies use. It's also important in that it can help prioritize which additional ecosystem assessment or ecosystem valuation tools to use. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Finally, using the Ecosystem Services Review can help companies strengthen their corporate profile. For sake of time, I think I'll just skip through this, actually. The ESR can support many business decisions. You'll see up on the screen right now a few examples of scopes and selected assessments that companies have used the ESR to inform. A recent WBCSD survey found that 94% of companies that had used the ESR within WBCSD's membership, they said that they would recommend the ESR to other companies. So that's a testament. That's a testament to the ESR's value added. So now we come to ESR 2.0. What's new in ESR 2.0? The most interesting update is that we've been able to link the ESR to new tools and resources that have come out in the last 3 or 4 years that can complement the ecosystem services you do. The best example of this is the World Business Council's Guide to Corporate Ecosystem Valuation, which is a logical next step after the ESR if it makes sense for a company to start quantifying or valuing its impacts and dependencies and risks and opportunities. So the ESR 2.0 has a new section about how to link the Ecosystem Services Review with the Guide for Corporate Ecosystem Valuation, among other tools as well. Other updates to the ESR 2.0, we updated the timetable that companies use to budget and schedule their ESR based on the corporate feedback from about 50 managers and consultants. We also improved the list of definitions of ecosystem services. This list now responds to the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment as well as the TEED framework. And finally, we've actually added supplemental ESR case studies to our list of resources. We have updated information on Mondi and Syngenta's ecosystem services management strategies since the ESR was released in 2008. And some companies like CEMEX, Yves Rocher, and Lafarge have actually donated new case studies to the arsenal of tools and resources that we can offer to corporate managers that are interested in using the ESR. There is another tool I'd like to direct your attention to, the Ecosystem Services Experts Directory. This is also a project, a collaborative project between WBCSD, WRI, IUCN, and Earthwatch Institute to help make ecosystem services experts available to those who are using the ESR. The database currently has 700 ecosystem services experts who are interested in helping either through interviews or providing information to companies that are using the ESR.